My parents repeated, "Money shouldn't matter between family," while removing my name from the estate plan in front of relatives. I didn't defend myself or explain anything. Later, when someone asked a simple question about ownership and no one answered right away, I knew the story had shifted. That silence in the room told me more than any confession ever could. Let me take you back to that afternoon. A Sunday in late September. The kind of day in North Carolina where the heat finally loosens its grip and the air carries that first whisper of autumn. We gathered at my parents' house, about 40 minutes outside Raleigh, in the same living room where I learned to walk, where I had my 6th birthday party, where my grandmother taught me how to braid hair while soap operas flickered in the background. The family was all there. My mother, my father, my younger brother Marcus, who had flown in from Seattle the night before, his wife Danielle, scrolling through her phone on the love seat, a few cousins, my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, perched near the window like she always does when she senses tension, but wants to pretend she doesn't, and me, sitting on the edge of the couch, still in the clothes I had worn to the cemetery that morning. We had buried my grandmother 6 days before. I hadn't slept more than a few hours since. My mother stood near the dining table with a manila folder in her hands, and she smiled the way she does when she's about to deliver news she's already decided is final. "We thought it would be good," she said, "to go over a few things while everyone's here, just to keep things clear, avoid confusion later." I watched her pull out a single sheet of paper and flatten it against the wood. "Now the property," she continued, "has always been meant for the family. Mama wanted us all to benefit. That's why we've made sure everything stays within the family trust." She said the word trust, like it was a gift, like it was protection. I didn't speak. My father looked at me once, then away. "Marcus will be listed as the primary trustee going forward," my mother said. "He'll oversee any decisions about the land, the rental income, the eventual sale if that becomes necessary. Elise, honey, you'll still be part of the family, of course. But the legal responsibilities should sit with someone who can manage them long term." She slid the paper toward my brother. He picked up a pen. "If you've ever sat in a room while your name was erased from something you built with your hands, with your time, with years you will never get back, then you already know what that moment feels like. If you haven't, I hope you never do." I didn't cry. I didn't stand up. I didn't say, "Wait, what about everything I did?" I just sat there. And that silence, that stillness was taken as agreement. Wherever you're watching from right now, whether it's a small town or a big city, drop it in the comments. I'm curious how many people have sat in rooms like that one. How many of you have been the quiet one? Let me explain what that property meant. My grandmother, Lorene Walker, bought that land in 1971, 3.5 acres on the edge of a neighborhood that didn't exist yet. She and my grandfather built the first house themselves. When he passed, she added 2 smaller homes on the same lot, rental units. Modest, clean. She managed them herself until her knees gave out and her memory started to slip. That was in 2016. I was 24. I moved into the main house with her. Everyone agreed it was the right thing to do. "You're not doing anything serious anyway," my mother said at the time. "And Marcus has his career. Danielle's got the kids to think about. You're the logical choice." I didn't argue. I left my apartment in Durham, gave up the lease, packed 2 suitcases and a box of books, and I moved into the back bedroom of my grandmother's house. I cooked her meals. I refilled her prescriptions. I bathed her when the aides didn't show up. I sat beside her at 3 in the morning when she forgot where she was and called out for my grandfather like he was still alive. For 6 years, I managed the rental properties too, collected rent, handled repairs, replaced a water heater with my own money once because the emergency fund had been drained and no one else offered. Nobody asked me to keep receipts, so I did anyway. Nobody asked me to document my hours, so I did anyway. Something in me knew, maybe not what was coming, but that I needed a record, that this wasn't the kind of family where your work would speak for itself. Let me be clear. I didn't do those things to earn the house. I didn't move in because I expected a reward. I moved in because she needed someone, and I was the only one willing to be that someone. But somewhere along the way, the story shifted. In family conversations, I stopped being the one who sacrificed. I became the one who lived rent-free, the one who didn't have to pay bills, the one who had it easy because grandma's house was basically free. Nobody mentioned the income I gave up. Nobody mentioned the opportunities I passed on because I couldn't leave her alone overnight. Nobody mentioned the time I turned down a job in Charlotte because the commute would have meant being away 12 hours a day. I just kept showing up, and the less I defended myself, the more the silence became their proof. The will was never read aloud at a formal gathering. That only happens in movies. In real life, wills get processed through attorneys and probate courts. Most families never see the full document unless they request it. My mother handled the estate. She told us what we needed to know, or what she decided we needed to know. She said my grandmother had left everything to the family trust, and that the trust would ensure the property stayed within the bloodline. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. 3 weeks after the burial, I received a letter, not from the attorney my mother had used, from a different law office, one town over. The return address was unfamiliar, but the name on the letterhead made my chest tighten. Laureen M. Walker. My grandmother had met with someone else, on her own. 2 years before she passed, before her memory became unreliable, before she stopped recognizing my voice on difficult days. The letter informed me that I had been named in a separate legal document, a handwritten amendment to the original will, notarized, witnessed, stored in a fireproof box in her attorney's office. The letter instructed me to contact the office directly to receive my copy. I drove there the next morning. The attorney's name was David Corbin, a man in his 60s, soft-spoken, with a small practice in a brick building off the main road. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single page written in my grandmother's handwriting. Her script had grown shaky by the time she wrote it, but the words were legible. To my granddaughter, Elise Marie Hollis, I am giving you full ownership of the main house and the land beneath it. The 2 rental homes are yours too. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who showed up. I'm sorry the others won't understand. I hope one day they will, but if they don't, I need you to know this. I saw you. I always saw you. Beneath the letter was a notarized deed transfer, already filed, already legal. My grandmother had removed the property from the family trust 2 years before she died and placed it entirely in my name. She had done it quietly. She hadn't told anyone, not even me. And now, sitting in that office, I understood why. She knew. She knew exactly what would happen if my mother found out. She knew the pressure that would follow, the arguments, the guilt, the slow manipulation, until I agreed to give it back for the sake of peace. So she made sure no one had the chance to undo it. I drove home in silence. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post anything. I didn't tell a soul. For 2 full weeks, I lived in that house, slept in that bedroom, walked across that land, and I said nothing. I want you to understand what those 2 weeks felt like. Every morning, my mother called with some new instruction. We're having the property appraised. Marcus is looking into refinancing the rental units. Patricia thinks we should sell and split the profit 4 ways. And every morning, I answered the phone and said, okay. I let them believe the lie still held. If this story is starting to make your chest tight, if you're recognizing something in it, hit that like button. Let me know I'm not talking into the dark alone. Now, here's the part where I need you to stay with me, because this is the part most people don't want to hear. There were moments when I questioned myself, not whether the deed was real, not whether my grandmother had meant it, but whether I deserved it. My brother had 2 kids. His wife had left her job to raise them. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't poor either. Still, I wondered, maybe the money would help them more. Maybe I was being selfish by keeping it. Maybe my grandmother had made a mistake at the end of her life, and I was using a piece of paper to justify something I shouldn't. One night, I almost tore that letter up. I held it over the sink with a lighter in my other hand. I thought, if I just let this go, the family stays intact. Nobody has to know. Nobody has to fight. I would walk away with nothing, and that would be the price of peace. And I almost did it. I almost swallowed the truth. The lighter was lit, the edge of the paper curled from the heat. But then I remembered something. My grandmother's voice. Elise, don't let them make you small. She used to say that when I was a teenager. When I stayed quiet while Marcus got all the attention. When I made myself invisible so others could shine. You matter too, she'd tell me. You don't have to be loud, but you don't have to disappear either. I turned off the lighter. I put the letter back in the envelope, and I made a decision. The confrontation didn't come from me. It came from a question. We were at my parents' house again, a month after the burial, another family meeting, more discussions about what to do with the property. My mother had invited a realtor. a woman named Sandra with bright lipstick and an eager handshake. She walked through the house, taking notes, measuring windows, asking questions about the rental units and their income history. At one point, she turned to my mother and asked, "And who holds the current deed? I'll need to verify ownership before we list." Nobody answered right away. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at me. And I didn't say a word. Sandra tilted her head. "There should be a record with the county clerk. Do you have a copy of the title?" My mother smiled her practice smile. "We're still sorting through the paperwork." But Sandra wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and began typing. A few moments later, her expression shifted. "I'm seeing a deed transfer recorded 18 months ago," she said slowly. "For this address, it lists an individual name, not a trust." She turned her phone around. And there was my name, Elise Marie Hollis. The room went silent. My mother's face didn't crumble. It hardened. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. "What is this?" she asked. I said, "It's Grandma's final decision." That's all I gave her. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't defend. My brother stood up. His voice cracked the way it used to when we were children, and he didn't get his way. "You can't be serious," he said. "You've been living here for free for years, and now you're trying to take everything?" I stayed seated. "I didn't take anything," I said. "She gave it to me, legally, clearly, on purpose." My mother stepped forward. "This is fraud," she said. "She wasn't in her right mind. We can contest this." I nodded slowly. "You can try," I said. But the document was notarized 2 years before her diagnosis. Her doctor had already cleared her for legal decisions. The attorney kept a video recording of the signing. Her mouth opened, then closed. I stood up. "I'm not going to argue about this," I said. "You had 6 years to show up. 6 years to help. 6 years to ask how she was doing, how I was doing. You didn't, and now you're upset because the outcome isn't what you expected." I picked up my bag. "The property is mine. The rental income is mine. If you want to fight it, go ahead, but I'm not pretending anymore." I walked toward the door. Behind me, Aunt Patricia whispered to someone. She was always so quiet. I never expected this from her. I didn't turn around. In the weeks that followed, my mother tried everything. She called the attorney's office demanding records. They declined due to client confidentiality. She called the county clerk. They confirmed the deed was valid. She hired her own lawyer to investigate. He found nothing actionable. There was no fraud, no manipulation, no undue influence. There was only a woman who loved her granddaughter and saw clearly, even when her memory was fading, who had earned the right to inherit what she built. My brother texted me once, just once. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the only answer that matters. I want to tell you what happened next, because this is where most stories would end, with the confrontation, with the walkout, with the mic drop. But life doesn't work that way. The legal clarity didn't stop the emotional fallout. For months, I was treated like a criminal at family gatherings. I no longer attended. My name became a swear word in group chats. I was quietly removed from cousins who had never said a negative word to my face, suddenly had opinions about my character. I heard them through the grapevine. She manipulated Grandma. She tricked her into signing. She only stayed in that house to get the payout. Every single one of those claims was a lie. But lies don't need evidence to spread. They only need an audience willing to believe them. I let the rumors run their course. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't send mass emails explaining my side. I just kept living. I fixed the leaky roof on the main house. I replaced the flooring in one of the rental units. I raised the rent slightly to match the market and made sure the tenants had working appliances and clean water. I started saving. I paid off the small debts I had carried for years. I began building something stable. The property wasn't just a house anymore. It was the first thing in my life that was truly mine, not because someone handed it to me out of pity, but because someone saw my worth before I did. If this part of the story is hitting you, comment and tell me what moment stuck with you. I read all of them. A year passed, then two. By the end of the second year, my brother's marriage fell apart, not because of money, because of other things. Secrets. Silences of a different kind. My mother's health started to decline. Small things at first, then bigger ones. Nobody reached out to me, and I didn't reach out to them. I won't pretend that felt good. It didn't. There were nights I sat on my grandmother's porch, staring at the trees she planted, wishing things had been different. Wishing I came from a family that could hold two truths at once, that I had been chosen because I earned it and that they could be happy for me anyway. But wishes don't fix people. And I was done waiting to be fixed by proximity. The final piece of this story happened last spring. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, reached out. She hadn't spoken to me in over a year. The message was short. Your mother is in the hospital. It's serious. I thought you should know. I didn't go. I sat with that decision for 3 full days. I walked through every room of the house. I looked at photographs of my grandmother. I asked myself what she would want me to do. And then I remembered something she said near the end. One of the last coherent things she told me before the fog took over. Elise, you spent your whole life trying to be good enough for people who didn't want to see you. Stop. I stayed home. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't go to the funeral either. 3 weeks later, I sent flowers. That felt like enough. You might think I'm cold for that. You might think I should have shown up anyway. Been the bigger person. Taken the high road. But the high road only leads somewhere if the other person is willing to meet you on it. My mother never once apologized. Never once acknowledged what she had done. Never once said, I understand why you're hurt. She died still believing I had stolen from her. And I made peace with that. Not because I agreed, but because I could not keep waiting for someone to become who they never were. Here's what I own now. 3 properties. Combined rental income of just under $4,000 a month. Equity that continues to grow as the neighborhood develops. Here's what they lost. Access to any of it. Legally. Financially. Completely. When my mother passed, her estate had little left to divide. My father had passed a few years earlier. Marcus got the family home, but it needed more work than it was worth. He eventually sold it at a loss. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel satisfied, not in the way movies make you think you should. I just felt still. I'm telling you this story now because I spent most of my life believing silence meant weakness. That if I didn't speak up, I didn't deserve to be heard. That keeping the peace was the same as keeping my place. It's not. Silence can be a wall, but it can also be a door. I chose when to stay quiet, and I chose when to speak. When I spoke, I didn't shout. I didn't bargain. I didn't beg them to see me differently. I just told the truth. Once, clearly, and then I left the room. They never expected it from me. The quiet one, the reliable one, the one who always showed up and never asked for anything. They didn't realize that quiet people are still paying attention. They didn't realize that just because I never made demands didn't mean I had none. And they certainly didn't realize that my grandmother had already made her decision. 2 years before she forgot my name, she wrote it on a deed. That was her final word, and no one could take it back. If you're still watching, hit subscribe and like the video, and leave a comment telling me your favorite part. I want to know what stayed with you. Because this story isn't really about money. It's about being seen. And finally, after 32 years, I saw myself too.